So black has an extra queen here and then a bunch of pieces are hanging, but white is given a checkmate. Can you find it before I reveal the whole beauty of the position? Hi guys, and welcome to Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every aspect of your chess game. Today I want to share with you this amazing games that I have played against my student who is around 900, and I have given a queen as an advantage, so it's gonna be interesting for you how you can potentially create some difficulties for your opponent who has an entire extra queen. That's a very fascinating game. I hope you're gonna enjoy it, so let's start. So I played as white, and the game started with g3, d6. I didn't want to go on in the center from the very beginning because, well, the chances are a lot of pieces are gonna be trade off, and then I don't have any chances. So I wanted to attack from the distance somehow, fianchetto my bishops, and maybe then try to attack. So I played here h4. The idea was to, create some uncertainty because, of course, we have learned some opening systems with my students. So well, she knew how to play there. She knew the ideas when white plays normally, like e4 and d4. So I wanted to create some unbalance. And of course, you want to get to unknown territory if you are playing against lower rated player, because, well, chances are he's not going to understand the main ideas there, what to do, and you can potentially outplay him. So I played h4, e5, and I played h5, trying to say, well, maybe I'm gonna play h6, create some difficulties, and then maybe attack the king eventually. But, well, my student was smart enough to play h6 just to block this whole thing altogether, and, well, I can't do anything there. So I decided to play c4, to open up some pieces, to develop a little bit. And then I decided that, well, I still have to attack the king, otherwise I don't have any chances. Sooner or later, my opponent is going to develop all of the pieces because, well, that's the first thing I always teach my students, to develop all of your pieces as fast as possible, as active as possible. And so I decided I have to be active right now. I have to create some attacking chances, otherwise I'm going to lose. So knight d7, g4, and eventually I want to play g5. I want to open up the king and attack it somehow. And so my pawn structure is a little bit weird. If black could use the weak dark squares, that would be great, of course, but you need to be a little bit tricky to do that. You need to move your knight somewhere like h7 and then maybe bring your bishop to g5, because if your opponent has a certain type of weak squares, like dark squares in this case, then you need to exchange the bishops, because the bishop is protecting all of those squares, so that you can use those and maybe jump with your knight there. My opponent played knight c5 here, which, well, seems to be logical. You're just going forward, you're opening up the bishop, so it's hard to blame it. I played knight h3, once again preparing the move, g5, because I wanted to take it with knight. If I just play g5, then, well, takes, and the knight goes away somewhere, and then I have to go back or exchange the bishops, which I don't really want, because the more pieces I exchange, the simpler it gets for my opponent to win the game, obviously. So I played here knight h3, preparing the move g5. My student played bishop e6, just finishing the development. Basically now all of the minor pieces are developed, but when the position is so closed, it doesn't really matter that much as long as I can create some attacking chances. So I played g5 here. Well, it's time for me, because if I spend more tempi to finish my development, maybe black will start some attacking ideas in the center, and then, well, my attack would be too slow. So I decided I have to push. So my opponent took here on h5, but, well, the drawback is obviously that I can take on h6, but if you take on g5, then this knight jumps, and then maybe I have some h6 idea. So knight h5 is okay. And here, what was important, you don't want your king to be opened, because then, of course, it's dangerous for you, and your opponent might attack and give you some checkmating ideas. So the right move is always g6. And then your king is very, very safe here. The knight is also protected. I mean, you don't have any difficulties at all. It's very difficult to imagine how white might create some attack here. But my opponent gave a check. Well, check is always good, because now I lose the right to castle. I'm going away, and it would be difficult for me to connect the second rook, which of course would be desirable for me. But then she took it. Instead of playing g6, taken on h6, I mean, it gives me some additional hopes, let's say. Of course, objectively, that's an extra queen, the position is completely winning, but if I want to get any chances, I have to attack the king. That's my only chance. So I took the pawn on h6, rook e8, and now king c2. Well, I decided I have to finish my development, I have to bring everything that I have to attack the king. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. And my opponent played queen a5, developing the queen, but the problem with that is that later on you're going to see that this queen is kind of offside here, because all of the main actions are happening here, and my king all of a sudden is pretty solid here. I don't have any real difficulties here. Like, it's hard to imagine some threats. So b5, b4 seems like a plan, but it's relatively slow, and that's what happened in the game. So I played rook g1. Of course, it's always very nice to put your rook in front of your opponent's king. It creates some discover attacks possible. So let's see what happened. My opponent played b5, trying to attack here, but of course you can't really ignore your opponent's threats altogether. That's a very common beginner's mistake, that you are not following your opponent's plans. And in this case, well, I already play f4 and I'm threatening some discovered checks here. So yeah, that's really dangerous, that's scary, and it should ring a bell, like I have to do something about it. I have to close this file, or for example, what was a very good thing to do here is to move the f pawn somewhere and then bring the king to the f file, where it's much more secure. And then the rook might come over to the g file, fighting for it, and then basically everything is good. But b5 happened, I played f4, preparing those discovered checks, and now my opponent played king h7, trying to escape out of those discovered checks, but h-file is not that secure either, because, well, somehow there are a bunch of pieces here, but once they're getting off, then it's gonna be clear that it's very dangerous for the king to be there. So that's what I decided to do. Also, my bishop is hanging, so I played bishop g5. I was basically choosing between knight g5 and bishop g5 here. Both are interesting because, well, kind of opening my rook and I'm threatening some pieces, but I decided I will always want to leave the knights on the board, because with the knights you can be very tricky, you can jump around and create some difficulties for your opponent. So I played bishop g5, and she played knight g3, attacking here the rook, and I said, well, okay, I'm gonna take two pieces, and that should be good, because well, I have a lot of minor pieces to attack the opponent's king, and that's exactly what I need. But before taking the knight, I did the check, so always start with checks. Even if you can just capture the piece back, it's not necessarily the right way. Always start with the most active opportunities, which are checks, captures, and threats, and only in this order. So knight g5 check, king went to g7, and now I just took the knight. I decided, well, I'm gonna take it for now and prepare some discover checks. It's not that simple to avoid everything, because if you try to run out with the king, then knight h7 is just a checkmate, as the bishop is covering this diagonal. And it's not that simple to avoid those checks, because, for example, if you want to run out and play king f8, well, that's gonna be a checkmate in one after knight h7, because the bishop is guarding this diagonal. And if you go to H file, somehow it's also not that you are very secure there. So my opponent played b4, just trying to create a counter threat, try to be active, but the drawback is obviously that I'm winning this bishop, so maybe it was better just to escape with the bishop somehow. Still the right checks, but, well, you're not losing another piece. So b4 happened, knight takes e6, in h7, and that's the first moment in the game where I have managed to equalize the position. So this one is a draw if I just give a perpetual check. So I played knight g5 here. Of course, I wanted to play for win, because I have a lot of pieces there which are attacking, so I can try to create some checkmating ideas. So I played knight g5, the king went to h6, and now, well, I can just take this pawn on f7. So my student didn't want to get back to the g file and once again running into some discovery checks. That is why she played king to h6, but, well, there are additional problems here, because knight f7, and now you have a choice where this king goes. So king h5, now you have this beautiful position where even though the knight is hanging, the bishop is hanging, the queen is extra for black, this position is completely winning for white. So I hope you have found the solution from the very beginning of the video. So the right move is to get away with the bishop somehow. Let's say f2, or maybe e1 would be even more beautiful, because we are keeping an eye on this queen in some variations. And then there is basically no way to stop the checkmate, because we want to play bishop f3, and that's a checkmate, because we want to play rook g5, and that's a checkmate. So it's very difficult to stop both, like rook g8 seems to be the only way, but still bishop to f3, rook to g4. Now if you take with a bishop, that would be a mistake because the king can escape to g6, and basically now the knight is hanging. I mean, the position is still winning for white just because we have so much material now, but it's even better to take with a rook, and then still the checkmate is basically unstoppable. So that was the right way to give a checkmate. Instead of king h5, my opponent played king h7, trying to secure the king, trying to be as safe as possible. But here it's also completely winning for white, so try to pause the video for a second and find the winning move. Okay, so the right move here is to put something on e4. Both moves are possible. I played here knight e4 because, well, I'm threatening a checkmate, and my opponent took, which is just a checkmate after bishop takes e4, the king has nowhere to go. But, I mean, how do you stop it? Knight f6 is such a huge threat. I guess the only way to stop it really is rook e6. I mean, yeah, my opponent also played queen a4 check and king b1 and now took on a4, but it doesn't change at all anything because, well, the king is incredibly safe here. It's not possible to give any checks to create any threats, because if you play b3, for example, I might just take, and once again there are no follow-up checks. So that's what happened. So I guess the only way to stop knight f6 checkmate is to play rook e6, because that's, well, literally not allowing to go there. But what's possible here is to take this knight on c5, and now it's a double attack here. And, well, if you take, then there is bishop e4 check. The king has nowhere to go, so the rook has to block it. And then another beautiful thing here, you can just take, but then once again this king will go away. But there is bishop to f6. And now there is no way to stop the checkmate again. If you try to bring another rook, which seems to be logical to defend this one, then rook h1 is suddenly a checkmate, as this rook is pinned. And if you try to make any other move, bring your queen back, or maybe create a threat here with b3, then yeah, I can just take the rook with a check, the king goes away, and even in terms of the material, it's already 3 pieces for the queen, which is good enough, and then, well, the attack is still going on. We can just play a3, avoiding any problems, and then the checkmate is coming, like queen a5. We can just remove this knight, and then there are so many checkmates in there, like bishop f7 and rook g8 if king goes to f8. Yeah, for example, the rook goes somewhere, just bishop f7 here, and if the king goes here, we have a checkmate here, and here we have checkmate rook h1. And so my student just removed this knight, but then bishop e4, and suddenly this king has no squares to go. It was a huge surprise for my student, but it's actually a checkmate. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope it was instructive for you to understand how you could create some threads, even if you're significantly down in terms of the material. Let me know in the comments, please, whether you like this type of videos, what you think about it, and maybe you have some other ideas for me to try. As a thank you for being with me up to this moment, I want to share with you 5 practical tips to get to 1000 rating as fast as possible. So check this video out to improve your chess today.